And introduce you. Hey, good day, everybody. Welcome back to our Genesis class live from Jerusalem with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg of the Noahide World Center. I really enjoyed last week's message. Was April 16th. You can find it in the YouTube links. Excellent message where he talked about some atheistic positions, but he pulled out some beautiful Torah material, and hopefully we got some more today for you. So let's just jump right in and see how the rabbi's doing. Shalom, Rabbi. So good to be with you again. And we're going to turn the class over to you, and I'll be quiet until you want me to read.
Fair enough. Hi, good evening, everybody. Good evening from Jerusalem. People asking me what is happening in Israel. Interesting timing, okay, in Israel. There's a very big debate between the liberal people and the people who are more religious people, but we will sort it out. Don't be afraid. Everything will be fine. It will take us at the time that it will take us, but we will do it in the right way for all over the world. But everything is fine here in Israel. Today we are in the middle. We call this the Redemption's Day. Okay, after we had Passover last week on Tuesday, we mentioned it was a Remembrance Day for the Holocaust, and this Tuesday we are remembering all those who got killed in all of the wars that we had No, the Holocaust was last week. This week, Tuesday, we are remembering all the people who died in all of the wars that we had here in Israel. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do to celebrate our Independence Day. So those are 9 days that are very, very, I'll call it a very, very heavy days. Okay, we are all together, remembering a lot of people, remembering all of our history. So I thought that it will be very good to discuss, again, from the sources, to bring resources for that, and to discuss the understanding, I will say, the importance of the Hebrew land. Let's learn something about the Hebrew land. But before we will start it, let me show you for a moment, let me share the screen, let me show you for a moment, let me share two places that God said to us that we're supposed to become a nation. Now, I think we spoke about those places in the Bible already more than once, but we need to show this again. This is from time to time, we need to remember the foundations of us. And the first one is in Genesis chapter 12. Please read verses 1 and 2. You read them a lot of them. You need to know them by heart now, but it's okay.
Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. And the Lord said to Abram, Go forth from your land and from your birthplace and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will aggrandize your name, and you shall be a blessing.
Excellent. So this is the opening statement about the Hebrew nation. You're going to become, or your destiny, your kids are going to become a great nation. We spoke about the first sentence here, or the first verse that is saying to us that we need to go out to expand our mind more than where we are. We're already in the past, but here we're speaking mainly that we're going to become a great nation. Let's go to another place in Exodus number 19. It says that also something very important. Please read verses 4, 5, and 6.
4. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and I brought you to me. And now, if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a treasure out of all peoples, for mine is the entire earth. And you shall be to me a kingdom of princes and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel.
Okay, kingdom of princes and holy nation. Again, we are supposed to become a nation. You know, this is chapter 19. Okay, this is the opening for the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are not something, you know, I will say there are 2 points that we must be very, I will say, we must highlight. I'll say like that. Point number 1, there are monks in our world. Okay, go to the Indian area, you will find a lot of monks that are putting themselves in all sorts of places, and people are giving them food, people are giving them a lot of things to stay alive. But you might admire those people, but those people are not giving you any, I will say, any way of learning how to live the life in this world. Why not to steal? Why not to kill? Why not to do all sorts of things? Because they are not living really in this world. They're living in all sorts of places in the mountains with themselves, and people are giving them food. They don't need to do anything. So this is the first reason why we need to build up a nation. There is another very profound reason why we must build a nation. If we look on the history of the world, we will see that maybe there were people that, you know, we all remember, we all know, but there were always leading nations. The history of the world is working through the nations, not through the individual. And this is where God is saying, if we want to bring something to this world, we must do it through a nation. Another thing, okay, so those are the most important points that we need to realize as a beginning, as an opening statement. Now, a nation, one of the things that nation need to have is a land, is a place where the nation can build up their country. It's not working by itself. And I showed it earlier this morning, but I will show this again, Bart, with your permission. I said that it's very clear in the Bible that the Israel place that we have today is the Hebrew land. And the example that I'm giving always is from Genesis, where we have Joseph, who was thrown down to the jail, and 2 of the servants of Pharaoh came to him, and they dreamed a dream, and they were very upset with the dreams. And he is explaining the dream in the right way. One of these servants is going back to Pharaoh, and the other one is going to get killed, okay, because of his behavior. And when Joseph is explaining to the one that is going to go back to Pharaoh, saying to him, look, I have a request from you. And my request is, please read verses 14 and 15. But remember me, please.
Verse 14, but remember me when things go well with you, and please do me a favor and mention me to Pharaoh, and you will get me out of this house. 15, for I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, and here too I have done nothing for which they have put me into the dungeon.
When he's saying, I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews, the servants of Pharaoh understand exactly from where he was stolen. So in the Bible era, in the time of the Bible, everybody knew that this is the land of the Hebrew people. It's not coincidence that Lord Balfour 100 years ago said, this is the Hebrew land. It's not coincidence that in San Remo, 3 years later, in Italy, they decided to give this land to the Hebrew people. It's not a coincidence that in 47, the United Nations decided to give this land to the Hebrew people. We're learning this from the Bible. The Bible is telling us that this is our land. And this is a place where we're going to build up the nation, our nation. And after here, it's only, it's much before the Hebrew people were already a nation in Joseph's time. But after that, we also know that the Hebrew people lived there for more than 1,000 years before they went out to the exile. In a moment, we're going to see a few things about the exile. Let us jump to one of the most important books that I think we have in the library. No, it's not the Tanya. I'm not speaking about the Tanya. We're speaking about the Kuzari, okay? The Kuzari book. The Kuzari book is, as we all know, it's a true story, but the book is written down through Rabbi Yehuda Halevi 850 years ago. The book is not the exact wording that there was there in the conversation between the king of the Kuzari and the sage of the Hebrew people. But Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is using the true story to tell us a lot of ideas about the Hebrew, I will say, faith. It's not only the Hebrew faith, it's also the prophecy faith, okay, as it was preserved. Now, why this is the most important book that we have? There's no way I can show you. In the last 100 years, we're speaking about 5 books, and this is the first one. Because this book was written down 850 years ago when the Hebrew people were very down inside the exile, and everybody, felt comfortable to say that they were nothing, or they were only the evidence that God decided to throw them. And Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is writing this book like we already here in Israel, another 850 years, when he's speaking with the non-Jewish people. He's trying to explain to them, to the non-Jewish people, I will say, the ideology or the importance of the prophecy. Okay, now we're going to learn a few parts. It's in essay 2, few parts about the importance of the Hebrew land. Okay, let's learn a bit. This is what we're doing. I think
essay 2, yes.
It's an essay 2. We never spoke about essay 2. This is the opportunity. Let's start. I'm not going to. There's a lot more to learn from this book. It's a very long and very important book. But we are jumping now to the Hebrew part, to the Hebrew land. Okay, so let's go to 7, please. El-Khazari, please read it down.
El-Khazari says, the secret of the attributes is now clear, and I understand the meaning of the glory of God, angel of God, and the Shekinah. They are names applied by the prophets to things perceptible, as pillar of cloud, consuming fire, cloud, mist, fire, splendor, as it is said of the light in the morning, in the evening, and on cloudy days, that the rays of light go forth from the sun. Although it is not visible, yet we say that the rays of light are inseparable from the sun, although in reality this is not so. It is the terrestrial bodies which, being opposite to it, are affected by it and reflect its light.
Okay, so this is closing. I'm not going to go inside too much to this paragraph. It is closing the paragraphs before that, where he spoke a bit about the names of God. And basically, it's more or less like the sun, okay? In the clouds, when you don't really see the sun, but you see, I will say, the string of the light from the sun that is coming to the earth. And you're saying to yourself, okay, so the names of God are more or less showing something that we know that in behind it, there is also the sun, there is God, but we don't really have it. And now the big surprise, and you know that the Kuzari always is giving us surprises. So read, please.
Verse 8 says,
number 8, verse 8, yes, please.
The rabbi replies, even so does the glory of God, which is only a ray of the divine light, benefit his people in his country.
Okay, benefit his people in his country. This is where it's coming, it's a bit surprising, because there is some sort of a spark, I will call it like that the Hebrew people are giving to the world. This is what the Kuzari is explaining. But now he's suddenly putting inside also the country. Now, we can all admit that the country is something very physical, right? It's a physical thing. And this is where the Kuzari is asking. Please read verse number 9.
9 says, Al-Khazari says, I understand what thou meanest by his people, but less intelligible is what thou sayest about his country.
This is a very physical thing, to speak about the people, and they have also soul, and they can become holy, and they can become, something in a spiritual level. The spiritual in the Hebrew, in the people, not only in the Hebrew people, from all over the world, is, I understand. But to speak with me about the spiritual thing in his country, this is something, that it's a bit weird. We have a rabbi from the last 80 years. He passed away, I think, something like 40 years ago, something like that. He said that the Hebrew people are doing monuments, not only in among people, but also among places and among time. Okay, for example, the Shabbat, Saturday, some sort of a monument that we are holding the time. Okay, so we need to start to realize that there is also, I will say it like that, if we really believe about unity of God, so everything that he created must have also a possibility to become holy. Again, I will say this sentence. If we really believe about unity of God, so the spiritual side is not only related to one part and not related to other parts of the world. We must say that the holiness could come also to parts of places and to parts of timing. By the way, those are the three things that you can't avoid. You're always under one of those three things. Always we want something. We have a will that is always working. For example, Dan, do you want to sleep now? Your answer will be no. I want to be awake.
I'm wide awake.
Okay, fair enough. So you want to be awake. It's not a play of a game of the wordings. Always you want something. We all always want something. And we all always under the timing, and we all always under some place. If you will go to the Star Trek, for example, it's always starting every episode with in this place, in the space, and this time and space. Right?
You must be thinking Star Wars, yeah, in a galaxy far
Star
away.
Wars,
Yeah.
also Star Trek, also the TV also.
There's got to be a setting, yeah, for sure.
Always
scene,
you need to put the setting of the timing and place. Okay? And we do believe that about in unity of God. So we can't separate and say that there is no holiest place. So let's continue on. Let's read verse number 10, please.
10. The rabbi replies, "Thou wilt have no difficulty in perceiving that one country may have higher qualifications than another. There are places in which particular plants, metals, or animals are found, or where the inhabitants are distinguished by their form and character, since perfection or deficiency of the soul are produced by the mingling of elements."
It's not a secret, okay? I'm inviting you all to go to all sorts of places. We all know that places also can bring people to behave differently. And people that are living on the mountains of the Himalaya, for example, in one, I will say, characterism. People who are living in California have different characterism. It's working like that, okay? Go to places like in the east of Europe, that all the time it's gray there. So a lot of people have a lot of downfall with their, I will say, environment, and they need to drink more vodka, for example, okay? We all know, it's the same thing, by the way, with the plants, with the trees. Not every tree can live in every place in the world. There are places, what we call the tropical places, where the pineapple and other places, other things will grow.
Yeah, we don't have palm trees up here in Canada.
For example, okay, there are places that are very unique to all sorts of things. And this is on the same level, the uniqueness of the Hebrew place. So let's show an example, okay? Let's jump for a moment to the king, it is, okay? This is King 2. This is King 2, chapter 17. Okay, this is where we see that read verses 5 and 6. It's a very sad. Those are very sad verses. Please.
All right, verse 5. And the king of Assyria went up through the entire land, and he went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. 6. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and exiled the Israelites to Assyria, and he repatriated them in Halah and in Habor and the Gozan River and the sites of Media.
So we're speaking about spreading the Israeli people.
The
By
captivity,
the way,
yes.
Until today, we don't know exactly where they are, more or less, we don't know. We lost the 10 tribes. This is what he did. But this king, of Assyria, he didn't want to leave this place without any people. So what exactly he did? It's amazing to think what they thought in those days. They were moving people from one place to another, so people won't rebel against the king. Because think about this for a moment. If, as a full country, you're moving to a different place, so it will take you a few years to realize how to live there. And the only thing that you will do in those days is not only to survive. You will fight for surviving, and you won't use your strength or whatever it is to do rebellion against the king. So he did the same thing with others. Now let's jump for a moment a bit down to the. You can read this. It's a very sad chapter. Okay, but let's read for a moment verses 24, 25. 24, 5 and 6. Sorry, please.
Okay, 24. Yeah, definitely that was a military strategy on the part of the Assyrians for sure. They were known to do that throughout that whole area. And the king of Assyria brought people from Babylonia and from Chutha and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim. And he settled them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they took possession of Samaria and dwelt in its cities. 25. And it was in the beginning of their dwelling there that they did not fear the Lord, and the Lord incited lions against them, and they were killing them. 26. And they said to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations that you exiled and settled in the cities of Samaria do not know the law of God of the land, and he has incited lions against them, and behold, they are killing them, as they do not know the law of God of the land.
Amazing. There is some sort of a correlation between the behavior of people and that God is killing them. And what they're asking, or what his advice to them, or what he's doing to them, is please read 27 and 28.
27. And the king of Assyria commanded, saying, bring there one of the priests whom I have exiled from there, and let them go and dwell there, and teach them the law of the God of the land. And one of the priests whom they had exiled from Samaria came and settled in Bethel, and he would direct them how they should fear the Lord.
It's amazing to think about this for a moment, okay? that it is related, it's connected. Today we are so far from this because we are living in urban cities, so we don't have any, I would say, natural connection between our behavior and the land that we are sitting there. Okay, it's very far from us. But this is what it's saying. There is a relation between people who are living in this land, in the Sumerian land, and their behavior. God will kill them unless they're going to behave in some sort of a minimal way of behavior that they're supposed to be here. And this is, I'm jumping back to the Kuzari, I'm going back to the Kuzari. This is exactly what he's saying to them, okay? We need to realize that there are specific places to specific people. And now the Kuzari will ask, and please read verse number 11 of the Kuzari. Al-Kuzari.
11. El-Khazari replies, yet I'd never heard that the inhabitants of Palestine were better than other people.
He's right. He's right. Even in his days, okay? What exactly is the specialist of those people there? So let's see the nice example that Rabbi Levi is giving us. Please read verse number 12.
The rabbi. How about the hill on which you say that the vines thrive so well? If it had not been properly planted and cultivated, it would never produce grapes. Priority belongs in the first instance to the people which, as stated before, is the essence and kernel of the nations. In the second instance, it would belong to the country on account of the religious acts connected with it, which I would compare to the cultivation of the vineyard. No other place would share the distinction of the divine influence, just as no other mountain might be able to produce good wine.
I was in your place, Dan. You invited me. It was very nice, and we saw a lot of wine.
Yes, and you brought me. Yeah, I live in wine country in British Columbia, and you brought me a bottle of wine from Jerusalem, and it was magnificent. My wife and I shared it, and with a good meal, and I'll tell you, boy.
Yes, first of all, yes, thank you. It's not from Jerusalem. It's from where I live. It's really next to Jerusalem. We live, and in our mountains, we also have very good winery. But we have three things that we need. We need the seeds, we need the ground, and we need also the exact behavior, how to deal with those, with the seed in the ground, so it will take out good grapes. And the same thing is happening with the Hebrew people, okay? This is the seeds that are living in the Hebrew land. This is the land with the right behavior where the divine of God, the prophecy will come to them. Again, it's very simple. This is what Rabbi Levi is explaining to us. Now, you're asking, why did we came back to the Hebrew land? Now, nowadays, it's amazing to think about this. In an era of the liberal era, where we say that we are prizing the reason, we are prizing the logic of the people, in this era, God created, I will say, a divine experience of the Hebrew nation who came back to their homeland and brought a Bible behavior to the modern world. And now, as more that we will be connected with our sources, with the right behavior, God very soon is going to give us back the prophecy where the world is looking for this, for this part. And this could be only after we are building the Hebrew state. This is the Independence Day that we're going to celebrate another 2 days. Starting to realize, I said, one of the things that I've decided to do in the last 3 months since my rabbi passed away, he was a giant. One of the things that he was really great on, he was always bringing us resources from the ancient rabbis who are writing things. And this is why I'm trying also to bring that it's not that I'm saying things that, from my heart. We have, I will say, it is connected to roots and things that are already written down through our rabbis. This paragraph 12 that we read now is explaining in a very simple way. If you want a good winery, you need to have the right seeds, you need to have the right place, and you need to have the right behavior to bring up these grapes, okay? So on the same level, if you want to have the prophecy, you need to have the right seeds. This is the Israelite. And as we explained in the first essay, okay, that the Israelite is the straight, I'll say, descendants from the Adam and Eve, okay, through Abraham and Sarah. So this is the right seeds. The right place is the Israelite, the Hebrew land, and the right behavior that they're building up the country in the manner of God, just as we saw with the Kutha people, that came to the Samaria and didn't behave in the right way, what happened to them? Now, Al-Kuzari is not so fast, I will say, accepting this thing. Please read 13. Rabbi Hershler, good to see you. Good evening. Another few minutes.
Yes, indeed. Lovely to see you.
Okay. Please, Dan,
okay,
read,
number 13,
number 13
Al-Kuzari replies, how could this be? In the time between Adam and Moses, were not prophetic visions in other places granted to Abraham in Ur of the Chaldees, Ezekiel and Daniel at Babylon, and Jeremiah in Egypt?
So he's saying to him, don't crap me. We see that other people also did prophecies, whatever it is, in other places of the world. So he's saying that only there is a special grapes. Very nice. By the way, why did he took in a moment we're going to answer this question, okay? But before that, why did he took this example of grapes? Anyone have any ideas? Of a wine. Why did he took the example of wine? Anyone have any ideas? Wine is the only thing that you can take from the nature. I was like, you're taking grapes, and the wine is something much greater than the grapes. It's giving us something new, a new dimension. You're taking the grapes, you're putting them inside a cube or something, some sort of a place, giving them time, and they're getting separated, between the wine, the good wine, and the bad part of the grapes. And then, as you said before, it's a delicious thing. And this is also why, when you're putting wine and secret in the Hebrew words on the same numeric numbers, you're drinking too much wine, all the secrets are going outside. It's something that the inside of the wine. So it's a better thing. And the same thing is with the prophecy. Something there from the inside is going outside, and the prophecy is coming. Okay? So the question is a good one. So now we need to read it. 14 is a very long one, but we're going to read it step by step. So let me organize for you. Okay? The first part that we're going to read. Please. Okay, not a problem.
Part 14. The rabbi says, whosoever prophesied did so either in the Holy Land or concerning it. Abraham in order to reach it, Ezekiel and Daniel on account of it. The two latter, having lived during the time of the first temple, had seen the Shekinah, through the influence of which each one who was duly prepared became of the elect and able to prophesy. Adam lived and died in the land.
Okay.
Tradition tells us that in the cave of Machpelah were buried the four pairs, Adam and Eve, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. This is the land which bore the name before the Lord, and of which it is stated that the eyes of the Lord thy God are always upon it, from Deuteronomy.
That's it.
11,
enough for
okay.
a moment. First of all, what is the answer? Yes, a specific answer. You said that there are others who do all sorts of prophecies. Okay? It's not really true. Everything that was prophesied outside of Israel was only for this land. Okay? Everything was related with this land, or it started in this land. So Cheskel started in this land. Let's remember, all of us, for a moment, talking about Jonah. Okay? God is asking Jonah to prophesy about Nineveh. And then Jonah is running away from God. How is that he run away from God? You can't run away from God, God is everywhere. You can't run away from God. No, but he's not running away from God. He doesn't want to fulfill this prophecy. So he's going outside of Israel not to get the prophecy. I will say it like that. It's like a radio that we have. Today we have the internet, okay? You can't get connected to the internet unless you have some sort of a Wi-Fi to get connected with. If it's out of the range of the Wi-Fi, you won't be able to get connected. So Jonah said, outside of Israel, I'm not connected to the Wi-Fi. I can go outside there. I'm running out from God. He won't speak with me outside of Israel. And this is what he is answering. Everybody who prophets about outside of Israel was also always related and connected to this land. Now he is continuing on with a very amazing thing. Please read a few words. Let's do, we came here, okay?
Okay, let me just move you over here. Okay, it was also the first object of jealousy and envy between Cain and Abel when they desired to know which of them would be Adam's successor, and heir to his essence and intrinsic perfection, to inherit the land and to stand in connection with the divine influence, whilst the other would be a non-entity. Then Abel was killed by Cain, and the realm was without an heir. It is stated that Cain went out of the presence of the Lord in Genesis 4:16, which means that he left the land, saying, "Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid," in Genesis 5:14.
So what exactly is the meaning of that? I need to go out from this land. I'm going to be hidden from God. I can't see him. Why? Because God threw him out from this land of the Hebrew land. Okay, now we're starting to realize what exactly, I'll say, the Bible is saying there when it's happening. Now he's also going to speak about Jonah. Please continue on a bit. In the same way.
In the same way, it is said, "But Jonah rose up to flee unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord," in Jonah 1:3. But he only fled from the place of prophecy. God, however, brought him back there out of the belly of the fish and appointed him prophet in the land. When Seth was born, he was like Adam, as it is said, "He begot in his own likeness after his image," in Genesis 5:3, and it took Abel's place, as it is said, "For God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew," in Genesis 4:25. He merited the title Son of God, like Adam, and he had a claim on the land, which is the next step to paradise. The land was then the object of jealousy between Isaac and Ishmael, till the latter was rejected as worthless, although it was said concerning him, "Behold, I have blessed him, and I will multiply him exceedingly," in Genesis 17:20.
Yes.
In worldly prosperity, but immediately after it is said, "My covenant will I establish with Isaac," in Genesis 17:21, which refers to his connection with the divine influence and happiness in the world to come. Neither Ishmael nor Esau could boast of a covenant, although they were otherwise prosperous. Jealousy arose between Jacob and Esau for the birthright and blessing, but Esau was rejected in favor of Jacob in spite of his strength and the latter's weakness. Jeremiah's prophecy concerning Egypt was uttered in Egypt itself. This was also the case with Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Sinai and Paran are reckoned as belonging to Palestine because they are on this side of the Red Sea, as it is said, "And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river," from Exodus 23:31.
Let's continue.
The desert is that of Parun, that great and terrible wilderness, from Deuteronomy 1:19, being the southern border. The fourth river is Euphrates in Genesis 2:14, designates the northern border, where there were the altars of the patriarchs who were answered by fire from heaven and the divine light. The binding of Isaac took place on a desolate mountain, Moriah. Not till the days of David, when it was inhabited, was the secret revealed that it was the place specially prepared for the Shekinah. Araunah the Jebusite tilled his land there. Thus it is said, "And Abraham called the name of the place,
Yes.
The Lord shall see, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen," from Genesis 22:14. In the book of the Chronicles, it is stated more clearly that the temple was built on Mount Moriah. These are without doubt the places worthy of being called the gates of heaven. Dost thou not see that Jacob ascribed the vision which he saw not to the purity of his soul, nor to his belief, nor to true integrity, but to the place, as it is said, how awful is this place, in Genesis 28:17. Prior to this, it is said, and he lighted upon a certain place, in Genesis 28:11, the chosen one. Was not Abraham also, after having been greatly exalted, brought into contact with the divine influence and made the heart of this essence removed from his country to the place in which his perfection should become complete? Thus,
Just a moment. Let me continue a bit more. Yes,
Thus, the agricultural finds the root of a good tree in a desert place. He transplants it into properly tilled ground to improve it and make it grow, to change it from a wild root into a cultivated one, from one which bore fruit by chance only to one which produced a luxuriant crop. In the same way, the gift of prophecy was retained among Abraham's descendants in Palestine, the property of many as long as they remained in the land and fulfilled the required conditions. Purity, worship, and sacrifices, and above all, the reverence of the Shekinah. For the divine influence, one might say, singles him out who appears worthy of being connected with it, such as prophets and pious men, and is their God. Reason chooses those whose natural gifts are perfect, the philosophers, and those whose souls and character are so harmonious that it can find its dwelling among them. The spirit of life, pure and simple, is to be found in beings which are endowed with ordinary primary faculties and particularly adapted to higher vitality, animals. Finally, organic life finds its habitat in a mixture of harmonious elements and produces plant.
So we're speaking about some sort of, I would say, growing up to this stage, where in this specific land where Cain and Abel were fighting, where Esau and Isaac, before that Ishmael and Isaac were fighting, then Esau and Jacob were fighting about this land, they were all fighting to have relation, to have connection with, I will say, God's land, to come to the stage of the prophecy. And this is, now we're starting to realize, when God is saying to the Hebrew nation, when he's saying, first of all, he's stating to Abraham, you will become a great nation in this land. Go to the land that you're going to become a great nation, with a prophecy. And then he's saying this also to the Hebrew people in the Exodus, in chapter 19, before they're getting the Ten Commandments. You're going to become a great nation. Where? In this land. This is what we are celebrating in those days of the redemption of the Hebrew nation, who came back to their homeland, because we didn't came here just for running away from the Holocaust to survive in a place. We need some place to survive. We came here because this is our, I will say, main aim, to bring back the relation and the connection between God and the world through the prophecy that he is speaking with men. Okay, not only living here without any purpose in our lives. We started to see a bit. We can learn this with much more, I will say, profound understanding. A lot of things here that he said, and we saw it more on the surface. But start to realize what exactly this is, the meaning of this, of the Hebrew nation who are celebrating their independence. Now you will tell me, but not everybody see those things. You're right, fair enough. Not everybody see that, also from the Hebrew people. But it will take us time, but we will manage at the end, and we will see this, we will understand that, and you're more than invited to celebrate with us. If there are any questions, it's a good time. One or two questions. The truth is, I prefer that Rabbi Shmuel Hershler, we will listen to Rabbi Shmuel a bit. He have also a few things to add, and then I will be here also to, we can speak and we can ask questions, whatever it is that we want to understand. Please, Rabbi Shmuel.
Yes, I would. First of all, I'd like to follow up on what Rav Chaim was dealing with, and I think if we want to see the divine presence as being central in our relation to faith, we have to understand that the living in the Holy Land is what enables that divine presence to be appreciated. There was one of the leading scholars who calculated that 30% of the overall commandments that are found in the Bible are only practically optional to be implemented in the Holy Land. 30%, and that's a lot. Part of what, if you think about the Kuzari, which Rav Chaim was teaching, I mean, the book was written in Arabic in the past. It was translated into Hebrew. 150 years ago, there were very few people around the world, even within the Jewish faith, who actually were speaking the biblical language. That was the reality. There's so many developments that have occurred because of the return to homeland, which are part and parcel, even if the people involved of doing this were not necessarily people that were totally committed to the religion, but they were involved in facilities which, through the concept of modern Zionism and statehood, enabled the actual option of returning to the sources which are in the Bible direct. Needless to say that in the Six-Day War, after the return to the areas which were central in the biblical stories, such as Bethlehem, Hebron, Bethel, and other parts quoted, this is what relived the biblical story into something that is a true reality. Yes, the rabbi mentioned that we did not return to this country just as a reaction is looking for a safe place after the Holocaust. Though I don't think it's an embarrassing thing, that it certainly was part of a reality that nobody wanted us after World War II anyhow. Unfortunately, there was a place to go to. But over and beyond that, if you read the biblical stories of the kings and even the periods between Joshua and King David, it's not that at all given times when the people were living in the land, everybody was committed at all times to full observance on a complete capacity. There were always shortcomings. There was always a period where things were not getting to the highest level of perfection. And I think this should give us a lot of strength today, that even if certain things that are happening today are not necessarily the ideal as we would like it to be seen, but we have the patience, we have the faith that things will develop, maybe not as quick as we would like, but that's part of what religion is in general. There are things that happen in gradual. The world is operating much faster nowadays than it were 500-600 years ago. If you take even in Europe in the Middle Ages, and not in the Jewish world actually, about how slowly between the early Middle Ages and the latter part of the Middle Ages was the culture developing, and the religious philosophy in the Christian world, for example. And here in the last 150 years, the development of thinking has been tremendous. So even if not everything is done in perfection, it's much further and much deeper and much more involved than it were even 60, 70 years ago. I mean, if you're talking down in British Columbia, there were hardly any schools of deep religious thought in that part of Canada 40, 50 years ago. And things have actually changed dramatically in that respect. And we have a lot to appreciate and be grateful to God for a major change that has actually encountered and occurred during this period, not something that is easily taken for granted. If you go back to the story in Exodus at the burning bush in Exodus 3, verse 12, where God says to Moses, the testimony that I have signed you is that when you will take the people out of Egypt, you will worship in me on this mountain. The burning bush traditionally is also where Mount Sinai was in the Sinai desert itself. Namely, the actual physical independence from the Egyptian servitude was a vehicle in order to actually appreciate the divine faith as it was delivered to us at the revelation. And one of the fundamental differences that has occurred ever since the re-independent Jewish life in the Holy Land is the marvel of how much more study and commitment there is to the religious faith and its depth amongst the younger population than it were 50, 60 years ago, let alone earlier than that. And a lot of it is related to the return of our people to that natural biblical homeland and our link to the meaning. That's why I say if 30% of the commandments are completely dependent on dwelling in the Holy Land, it's not surprising that these things operate in that sense. I mean, today may be April 23rd, but in Israel, the calendar in general, the schools, the employment, everything actually is dependent on the national level on the Hebrew calendar. Even people who don't feel themselves necessarily committed to a full extent to religion know when Passover is, know when the New Year is, know even when Purim is, which is a rabbinical festival. In other words, the entire calendar is part and parcel of the whole system. And that's something which is a dramatic change. When I was in the diaspora years ago, when there was university finals in June, and as you know, in June, we have the Pentecost, we have the Shavuot festival at that time of the year. And if it comes out during the week, very often the exams were on the Jewish festival itself. And I had to write a letter to the academic students that these people so-and-so belong to the Jewish observant faith, and they're not able to write the exam because of the festival. Please give them the option to write the test a week later or 3 days later. These kind of things are not relevant in this country, but they're relevant around the world as a whole, because the whole system here is developed around that beautiful idea of our independent calendar. As we learned before Passover, that the introduction of the Jewish new moon, by the way, in the Hebrew calendar, we had a new moon on Friday and Saturday just now. These last 2 days were the beginning of the new Hebrew month. These ideas are all part of the independence the Jewish people received. We find in the Jewish analogy that it's like when the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, the king all of a sudden said to the slave, I'm giving you a gift, and the gift I'm giving you is a watch. From now on, you are to determine the timetable. You are going to decide when the months are, when the weeks begin, how the whole system of the timetable is dependent on us. What differentiates between an employee and a slave is that an employee works a certain amount of hours per week, has the right to strike if he wants to and not to continue to work, whereas a slave has no interruptions at all. And once we became a free nation in serving God, we are the ones who determine his timetable, so to speak, and we follow in that direction. It is quite ironical, as the rabbi was talking about earlier, that the change in our historical development ever since Passover and the commemoration of the Holocaust and the rebuilding of the state were all in close proximity as far as the Hebrew calendar is concerned. In other words, they happen to be, it's just coincidental, but obviously much more than that, that all of these very important historical events of the 20th century fit exactly in the Hebrew calendar, one after the other, leading us in the procedure as we are getting closer day by day now towards the period of the revelation. We count every night the Omer calendar, 49 days in a row between Passover and Pentecost. In fact, the name Pentecost originates that it's the 50th day from Passover till we get to that revelation. So we're talking about a continuous development. But to be honest with you, A development doesn't always mean that every time things are going that well. My father, of blessed memory, his employment was a structural engineer, and he used to be involved in blueprints and building swimming pools for the Board of Education in the United States, for schools to have swimming pools and gyms. And okay, sometimes things were easy to do and sometimes they were not. Not every time you see the development in the pace and the way you'd like it to happen, but there is a master plan, and that master plan is going to be achieved. It's going to be completed. It may not be necessarily in the pace, the extent, the enthusiasm that I have when it begins, but never lose faith that it's going to happen. It will. We had already 2 temples, and the 2 temples were both destroyed in the meantime, and we're still very committed for a third time on the round and all of what's related to it. And if after 2 millennia we return to the homeland, we have a lot of hope and what to see as a major change. I have some family of my own, from my own side, of people that left Europe just on time before World War II. And as a result, they have a huge family compared to other friends and cousins who came from the same areas of the world and had to start again from nowhere. But thank goodness in the last 70 some years, they have redeveloped and grew. So you can see those who had that natural flow and those who had to start again and rebuild themselves. And today, thank goodness, after this long period, we're getting together and things are becoming even again from all parts of the Jewish world. So I'd appreciate if you have any questions and comments also related to what I was talking about, and I will respond accordingly.
Wow, good message for sure. Useful.
Oh,
I mean, definitely, I love the analogy that plants belong in a certain area for sure. I mean, when you think about it, I think that that's the definition of sanctification, that something is where it ought to be or it's designed for. And yeah, it's all part of the wondrous order of Hashem, isn't it?
Very much so.
this is how it's working, right? And Gary, good to see you. I'm happy that you managed to come inside at the end. But if there are any questions or anything that you want to note about the things that we spoke, Italo, we're missing your lovely girl. It's okay.
Okay, thank you. No, I don't. I jumped in a little late. Though I was having some Zoom issues on my side, so I did not get to hear. But I was determined to join the group, and I look forward to joining throughout the future. So I appreciate it. Took some time. Took some time. I had to go through several rabbis. I think it was Rabbi Reuven that said to get a hold of Rabbi Chaim. So I said, I made a beeline for that. Unfortunately, the holidays had happened, so we caught each other right before and then right after. So anyway, I'm happy to be here and look forward to working and look forward to learning more importantly. Now, on the fact, do I have a million questions? Yes, absolutely. As you know, I know nothing. I'll give you a brief background for everybody since I'm here. Very early on in my life, I had I would say supernatural experience, and I knew it was Hashem. But at the time I was very young, I was 18, and I played baseball in college, and we were evaluating colleges. Ended up going to a Christian university on scholarship, very liberal from that sense. But what I did end up doing, and please appreciate it, I had no idea what I was doing, but what I ended up doing was majoring in history, which is relatively common, but I double majored in, they didn't call it this, they called it biblical studies, but I focused on the Old Testament, basically the Pentateuch and the prophets. And I can't tell you why I did that, but that stuck in through my whole life. And unfortunately, I lived a wicked life. So recently, I decided to turn that life around. And shortly thereafter, I found out I had terminal cancer. Hashem knocked on the door and gave me, Baruch Hashem, another chance. I don't know if you're familiar with pancreatic cancer, but I shouldn't be alive. And Hashem has kept me alive to learn. I believe that, and to repent, to do teshuvah. And that's obviously where I need to work with a rabbi, as you know, to go through teshuvah that could take many years, right? And that juxtaposition, the cancer, is incongruent. so we're going to do the best that we can, because I'm terrified of Hashem and I'm terrified of Ganem. So not interested in going. Anyway.
We're glad to have you with us, Gary. Have you got a specific question?
No, not today. I think mine are more on the lines of length of time, specifically teshuvah. I know it can take a lot of time. I know you need to be led by a rabbi. I mean, at least the Rabbi Alana Nava, and a few of the others. Tovia.
It just begins with the turning around, though, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. To your point, one of the things that I learned was stop the waterworks, right, of sin, and I don't know how I gained the strength, but I stopped. I turned off the waterworks. Everything stopped. So no women, no fornication, no spilling of seed, and I can say that for the past 2 years, and that's how strongly I feel. Honestly, stripped of parnasah, stripped of everything, and I'm telling you, I'm very, very happy. Not necessarily, it's a massive struggle to go through, but Hashem loves those he, strips of everything and gives an opportunity. And so my questions are going to be a lot longer. You have to understand is that even though I have a piece of education, it's largely worthless. I often felt in asking professors, why aren't we learning from the Jewish scholars on, if we're going to study the Old Testament, nobody knows it better. Well, those are things you're not supposed to say in a Christian university or school of theology, if you will. So no specific questions tonight.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gary, and we all hope that you will get healed and everything will be back as usual. The desire to get closer to God, this is already the main step for better life and to behave in the right way. Others you're welcome. Anyone else have any questions, notes, something that you want to ask about things that we've learned tonight? I'm really surprised that Italo is very quiet in the last few days, but it's okay.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions.
So he's feeling good. He's feeling good.
Yeah, I'm good. I got a new mic, so I can speak properly. So I wanted to ask a question. You talked about the people's moving, the Sumerians. They moved them to Israel. So what happened to them? Did they go back to where they come from? A lot of people move around, coming to America, going here with, and what do they have to adapt? Then they become part of the land. They become, they attach this, into the land, or do they have to go back? How does that work? Just that question for you.
I'm not really, I will say it like that. Basically, when someone is immigrating to another place, so what's happening is that he is assimilating in the place that he immigrated to. This is how it's working. This is a normal thing that's happening. There is a unique place, one unique place in this world, in this globe, and this is called the Hebrew place. Okay, it's working a bit differently, and you need to also to get assimilated with the people here, or by converting to Judaism, or, and this is another possibility, becoming a Noahide, what we call Ger Toshav. Okay, in Israel, but you must behave in Israel in the right way, in the Israel land in the right way. It's much more, I would say, harder. רבי שמואל, אתה רוצה להוסיף משהו על זה?
With pleasure. I mean, the actual Samaritan plight was more than 2.5 millennia ago. And in the course of history, of course, as the rabbi indicated, there's been a lot of changes and maneuver. But also correct that in order to survive in Palestine or later in Israel, there are certain conditions that the Noahides are expected to as well. And by them, the conversion was not done out of actual, like with you, with real serious commitment. It was mainly an act of fear. And I find, as you can hear sometimes in my talks, that there's a lot to talk about the plight of our history, which gives such a tremendous effect on our religious outlook. And the Samaritans are, for example, a good example of the evolution in relation to religion. In other words, their plight was for a limited period of time, and they virtually disappeared, and we hardly have a trace of them. But I'll give you an example. I was in Spain. I lectured 4 years ago for a week, and one of the heads of the community over there said to me, you should know, as you know, in 1492, there was an expulsion from Spain, and 5 years later from Portugal. In 1492, there was over 250,000 Jews living in Spain, and at least 100,000 of them were expelled, closer to 200,000. But over 50,000 of them remained in Spain under camouflage as being Christian, but they really were keeping Judaism in quiet. In fact, the Kol Nidre prayer in Yom Kippur was designated partially for these people to keep their connection annually. What he said to me is that you should know that in the Spanish government of today, more than 40% of the leadership are from those Marranos who hid as Jews within their own country. If you think about it, this is 540 years ago. We're talking about at 530 years ago. We're talking about in 1492. You imagine how many people we're referring to. And in Spain, they didn't suffer much in World War II and not so much in World War I. So the multiplying numbers never stopped. These were people that were far more committed than the Samaritans. I'm not answering to Italo completely, but I want you to understand that part of that history is what we appreciate today. We're still having people that we can identify from previous periods, their commitment towards religion, which is amazing, much more than the Samaritan. Oh yeah, for sure.
Fair enough. Yes, but
What about?
Yes.
Sorry.
No,
What about the other side? What about let's say other people that are living in the land of Israel, like the Palestinians or Christians that are living there? Is that why there's a kind of a feud or like no peace? I don't know what's going on with the Christians, but we can see in the news the Palestinians know what's going on. Sorry.
There's 4 billion people in the world who are debating 2.5 miles square. That's all. 2.5 square miles is the topic of 4 billion. More than 50% of the world population today are dealing with the exact same piece of land. Look, realistically, we're not ignoring the fact that for a millennia and a half, the Palestine was dominated first by the Christians and then by the Muslims. That's not the question. The question is not who was physically there, but what has happened, what has developed. When was the country in its center? When did it reach the divine providence to an extent? And that goes back to what you were talking, Dan, about agriculture. Just see the beauty of what this country looks like in the last 50 years and compare it to the last 2,000 years, and you'll see the dramatic change. It's so obvious, anybody with an eye opening, that God has received his children back.
Right, like last week, Rabbi Goldberg mentioned Mark Twain being there in the late 1800s, about 150 years ago, and citing no trees between his trip to Jerusalem, or one tree he cited, and yeah, he said it was a vast wasteland, and now, you know, to drink wine from the land of Israel, it's like, wow, amazing.
The cows that are milked in the Galilee today offer more milk per cow than any country in the world today, including the United States. This is a fact. I'm not talking out of context. The cows offer more fresh milk than any place in the world today, 2023. That's reality.
We came back to the Hebrew land. I said a few words about the Hebrew land.
Well, we look forward to seeing much more coming out of the land of Israel, but we're so grateful that you share the light of Torah with us, Rabbi.
Not a problem. Okay. I think that this is enough for tonight. Hopefully next week we're all going to see each other, no? You're all invited.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
absolutely.
Well, beautiful class, Rabbi. We thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing more. I'm so interested, especially in the second essay of the Kuzari now. You and I started off over 5-6 years ago now with the Kuzari, and we only went through essay 1, which was quite profound. So much information in that. I encourage anybody to read the Kuzari. Beautiful work that will just fill in a lot of gaps for anybody. I enjoyed it, and I think it's still available online as well. Yeah, beautiful. So I think that's our class for today, but I will be back later this afternoon in a few hours with Rabbi Chaim Goldberg. He's going to start the book of Ezra today, sharing that with us, so it should be very exciting. I invite you to that. That will be at 5 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Will be on the Noahide World Center social media pages. And thank you so much, Rabbi and Rabbi Hirschler. Always a joy to have you with us and sharing profound thoughts. It means so much to all of us that attend in the Zoom meeting. And for those of you listening, if you want to attend with us in the Zoom meeting, get to meet more people and be hands-on or involved more.
Yeah, that'd be great if I can get a link to that as well.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, you can always message me on Facebook, Dan Barwell, and I will do my best to make sure you get the Zoom links. And yeah, thanks for all. And we'll be back same time next week. So till then, have a wonderful, wonderful week.